Yes, hello and a very good afternoon and welcome to our live demo with our friends from Creactives here this afternoon, or good morning, maybe if you're tuning in from North America. Just to make sure that everyone is live and can see or hear us, just drop us a comment and let us know where you're watching us from. Yeah, we'll just give it a couple of minutes before we hand over to Adriano and Chiara from Creactives to give a quick introduction from their side. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, master data and spend data can be a little bit of a witch's cauldron if you don't know what you're doing and you've got dirty data from multiple different ERP systems. This is especially a problem in manufacturing businesses, particularly that have grown through acquisition and have maybe taken on different companies as they've grown, and they have multiple ERP systems within their organization. And you're trying as a procurement professional, or maybe as a finance or analyst, to be able to pull all of that data into one place and be able to understand what it is that's being purchased, especially on things like MRO, where you have a lot of free text, non-inventoried items, and it's often very, very difficult to figure out what you're buying. Hi, Praveen from Chennai, Andreas from Zurich. Grüezi miteinander. I hope I did that okay. I used to go to Switzerland every 2 weeks with one of my previous jobs, and by the end of it, I could almost understand Schweizerdeutsch, but it's very difficult, even for anyone that speaks German. So yeah, without any further ado, I will hand over to Adriano. Chiara in the background is going to be handling everything on the tech side with the presentation. So yeah, Adriano, over to you, sir. Buon pomeriggio.
Thank you, James. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to such a large audience. Well, the topic of today is all about quality of the data in the procurement area and what you can get for enhanced quality of the data. So we're going to share a couple of slides before entering in the specific topic, only just to tell you what is Creactives right now and what we intend about quality of data indeed. So if we share a couple of slides, only to explain why we are here, and we hope that this conversation would be interesting for you. So first of all, the very famous and right now popular spider chart elaborated by Eloise Epstein for Kearney has right now put Creactives right in the center. And why right in the center? Because in the center there is what is called data formation. So the point is that whatever is your pain, whatever system you choose with your journey in digitization of your procurement, whatever system, best of breed, platform, system you want to choose, the enabler factor to have a success is the data that you feed in and the results that you get for those platforms, those applications will be directly linked with the quality of the data. So if we jump to this very famous diagram invented many, many years ago by Garner, every kind of installation of a new system will go through a path that all of you that are professional of the procurement, you will know. So next slide, please. So, and this, you know, this situation where you try to trigger a new approach with an innovation. There is a lot of expectations, and then simply, as always, there is a big change management issue, and you can go through the disillusionment very fast, And before getting the plateau of productivity, you can have a very large journey. So one of the ways to bridge this difficulty is exactly the quality of the data. So what we maintain in Creactives that is necessary to have high quality of the data to really make possible to do not fall in that hole. And maybe, and sometimes happens that there are failures, complete failures of implementations of new approaches because of the quality of the data. So, but what we intend specifically about quality of the data in procurement, and specifically in what James said are all the indirect procurements or the material and services that a company that could be in process manufacturing, in discrete manufacturing, oil and gas, energy production. So all the companies that have to deal with plants, complicated production lines, etc., etc. So in our intent, quality of the data means, first of all, categorization, by nature categorization. So procurement doesn't need explicitly to know where you use a part from the point of view of the optimization of the inventories, from the point of view of the optimization of the procurement process. But first of all, granular categorization by nature, meaning that you need to have a taxonomy, so a structure for categorize them well. And then you can have, through the artificial intelligence, a transformation of the data. This yellow part that you see here are 3 different descriptions of an item, or that in 3 different languages that the artificial intelligence can recognize belongs to the same category. So circuit breakers. In this case, we are using UNSPSC, but obviously we can use any kind of taxonomy you are currently using in your own environment. And obviously, these 3 items can become from different ERP systems, are in different languages, can be coded in different ways, but artificial intelligence can bridge the gap and can tell you are exactly circuit breakers. Another element that complete the fact that you need the enhance the quality of the data is the enrichment, exploiting information that today you are not able to use. For example, you can have in your descriptions very valuable information that artificial intelligence can capture and can extract and can use later on to make aggregations and comparisons. So, for example, we can extract the brand and the code of the producer, even if this description that you see here seems to be very, very cryptical. Only an expert of the domain can understand. The artificial intelligence does the same and can tell you that this is a signal cable, probably UNSPSC, but more, can tell you that is a Siemens kind of signal cable. Even Siemens is not explicitly written there, because artificial intelligence works like a human being that is very expert of the domain and can tell you something that is not explicitly written and can be enriched later on using the artificial intelligence approach. And finally,
wow, that's interesting. So sorry, Adriano. So that's really interesting. I just wanted to ask on that. So it can recognize then a certain way that a part number is structured, and through that structure, it can immediately say, okay, that is a Siemens part number.
Yes. And,
wow.
and this is like when you go to a very expert of the domain. So, for example, a distributor of components, or you are a warehouse manager, probably he knows. And this is exactly what we try to reproduce with artificial intelligence. The same way that the human brain does this kind of connection with different sources of information to provide a meaning that for a person that is ignorant of the technical domain means nothing. So I'm not an expert of PLC or signal cables, and if I see this sequence of letters and numbers, for me means nothing. but for an expert of the domain means a lot. And this is exactly the reproduction of the human way of thinking that the artificial intelligence can bring to the table.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially in countries where the stores person may not have a technical background, because I know in a lot of European countries, especially in Northern Europe, it's quite usual that the stores person has done some sort of technical or mechanical apprenticeship. But if you go to places like the Middle East, for example, you often don't have that. So that's a neat piece of tech if you've got some capability gaps in your storeroom or warehousing staff.
Yeah, and you will see how much process you can enable having this capability later on in the part of the analytics of the spending. And finally, there is also obviously the fact that because most of the time in the technical environment we are speaking is very common that you have to deal with different legal entities that really are belonging to the same mother company. And because the legal entities has many times in different ERPs encoded in different ways, you must know really how much you are buying or how much you are dealing with, for example, in this case, Siemens, in order to have better leverage to make better negotiation, even if those legal entities has been encoded in different ways in different systems. And right now, they really belong to a single producer. So when we said that we need quality on master data and in material and POs and purchase order and invoices, what we are saying as Creactives that we are able to take information that today is like the yellow part of the story, and we can transform and reach and normalize in the way that you can see in the green part of the story using artificial intelligence. Whenever you have this capability, you can build up a lot from the perspective of spend analytics, procurement, digitization, and try to get the goals of every kind of process of digitization you may think are the goals in this process. So before getting on maybe we can stop here the screen sharing, and before getting on the demo, I don't know you, James, maybe you have already seen this, but I suppose that you have some words here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you raised a really interesting point there, Adriano, because a lot of people, when they look at putting in some sort of procure to pay suite and maybe bringing in catalogs to buy these types of items, things like Siemens circuit breakers, these are typical off-the-shelf components that can be purchased through distributors in a classic catalog or punch-out type of system. And if you don't have the right master data, then you're going to be putting garbage into any procure to pay suite or front end procurement tech system that you want your users to use for sort of requisition to PO type of operation. So it really, I mean, I say this a lot with a lot of content that I do, and I've spoken a lot on the podcast as well, the Procure Tech podcast. If you haven't heard of it, look it up in Apple or Spotify. That's our regular podcast on all things procurement technology. I say it a lot. If you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out, and any total investment that you have into a digitization initiative of procurement should really include, especially if you're a manufacturing company, some upfront costs and investment into your data cleaning. It's not a cost, it's an investment. And until you get that right, you're going to struggle, and you're going to be weighed under the classic situation where the biggest category of spend that you have is always various or uncategorized, that horrible big piece of the pie that we've seen so often. So absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true, and it's a pain because this implies that there is a lot of manual effort later on for the category managers, for the people that are in charge to manage this kind of information, that they have to take the data out from the system to cleanse manually, to re-elaborate manually, and then has trustable reports and maybe get actionable data for the purposes of their own category management or reporting on the higher level. So what we maintain here is that using artificial intelligence, you can skip the problem of creating good data. And so you can have more time to act on the data, because the value added for the company is not to create good data, is to act on good data. And so we are in charge to provide the good data with artificial intelligence. And then a category manager, a CPO, a buyer can have their own set of tools and then try to get the results that they are expected on the management side from there. So I would ask to Chiara to start sharing the demo environment of our solution for total spend and visibility. And the scope of this little demo is not only to show that there is a front end, because maybe you are familiar with many of the front end, but also to show that using good data, you can have very unexpected from the situation of today's situation of the market point of views that empower a lot the capabilities of a category manager, for example, to study his own category in a ways that are impossible if you don't have the quality of the data I mentioned before. So I would pass the word now to Chiara to show you, for example, what we intend by nature analysis.
Yes, so the by nature analysis is the main tab where we can see all of the spend categorized in the correct areas of the taxonomy. It can be a standard taxonomy or a custom taxonomy. In this example, it is a custom taxonomy. And here is the spend already categorized at the 95% of quality into the main level of the taxonomy. So in this case, for example, we have marketing, commercial components, ICTs, so all of the categories that you normally know. The spend is also represented by some graphics. For example, the top 10 of the main supplier groups or the top 10 of the main organizations. So it might be very interesting in knowing where the spend is or how the spend is distributed through the categories. In TSV, it's also possible to drill down the categories only by clicking on a certain category. So we are now going into details of the commercial components or electric components. So let's say that it's important for a category manager for the electric components to see and manage the spend underneath this category. In this case, we see the details of the subcategories with some KPIs like the spend, the number of documents like invoices or POs, or the number of suppliers. And just below, the top 10s are already updated with the new data perimeter, so the electrical components area. On the side, we also have the impact of the top 10 on the global dataset. Also above here, we can see other KPIs that can be customized. For example, the part of the spend that is codified, so it means connected to a material master data, or the intercompany spend, or the spend that is under a certain frame contract, or outside. This view of the taxonomy, of the components of the taxonomy, can be also added by the folder navigation. So in this case, we can see up to any level possible that we have in the taxonomy. We can analyze the spend of the invoices, for example, and we can expand the analysis. In this case, we are analyzing the details of the electric components area by looking at the subcategories of this area. with the related spend for the invoices, the number of documents related to this spend, the number of suppliers involved, as well as the division of the suppliers into an ABC division.
And I suppose that you can show, for example, how a category manager that is in charge of the electric components can show the top 10 subcategories they have to deal with.
Yes. For example, if we go back into here, we can see the top 10 subcategories where the spend is divided into. So in this case, generators, switches, or other kind of electric components.
So here we have a practical example how to drill down in a very detailed way in few clicks regarding the main components of what we have to deal with and focus my attention as a category manager where it matters. So I have 10 subcategories that today represent how much money in the spending of my category under management?
The 55% in this case.
55%. So I have focus on 10 categories that represent the 50 subcategories, sorry, that represent the 55% of my spending under management. And I can drill down and I can have any kind of detail. For example, I could be curious to know how many brands of producer I'm buying from these categories.
Yep. So in this case, we can go into the brand analysis, which is the list of the brands that are included in this data perimeter. So we are always under the electric components area, for example. And in this case, we can order the analysis by value, so we can see where the most of the money are. And we can compare the information of the brands, so the name of the manufacturer, which is one of the information that is enriched by Creactives over the data, in comparison with how many supplier groups are connected to this brand. So, for example, I can see that the brand Siemens is acquired from more than from 80 suppliers. So it's a long list of suppliers.
But you can click on that and you can know what is behind.
So there is the details shown on the side of the division of the suppliers into 3 groups ABC, which are always approached in a Pareto way. So the group A is the number of suppliers that compose the 80% of the spend, so the majority of the spend, where we can see Siemens directly. So it means that the company is acquiring also directly from Siemens, but we can see other suppliers. For example, I can see this Comercial Eléctrica, which is a third supplier that it's not connected with Siemens at all. I can see the details of this supplier again and see what are the rows, the spend lines that compose these suppliers. So here we can see the descriptions, the brand that is a Siemens, we said this already, the codes, so another enrichment, extraction and normalization of the codes from the description, and the supplier names, so the Comercial Eléctrica.
So before the artificial intelligence, there was no way to know that those lines are belonging from Siemens in the original data, because the supplier was Comercial Eléctrica, and the description was very cryptic because it was only a sequence of codes, names, and numbers, very cryptic. It's not even written Siemens there. So the column of Siemens was not present in the original data, as well as not present the column of the code. These are 2 additional information that has been deducted by the artificial intelligence and has been normalized in separate columns, making possible aggregation that was not possible to do before the artificial intelligence. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, correct. So there was no way before to know these lines were Siemens, and now the column of brand and code and supplier name normalized are absolutely given by Creactives.
Yes. And so you can do a lot of things with that, yeah? So, for example, you can make comparisons of prices, yes?
Yes, we can jump into another feature, which is the potential savings feature. So in this case, it's an overview and the distribution of the potential savings trend through the comparison of prices, different prices of the same item. How is the definition of same item is the same combination of brand and code. So in this case, we can see, first, the top 10 of the categories of the potential savings. Then where the potential savings is split as a top 10 in my legal entities, so the organization of the company. Where are the most of the brands? And then divided also here, aggregated for the codes, we can see where we have potential savings. So in this case, the main aggregation is the code, normalized, of course, because in the main description, the code can also be written in different ways. So in this case, it's extracted as an information and is normalized in a separate fields. And in this case, we can see the potential savings for all of these codes. We can see also if the trend of the price variation is decreasing, if is increasing, or if it has some outliers, so some inconsistent values, for example. And by
But
clicking,
you can exclude from the analysis very quickly, yes?
yes,
If there
true.
is an inconsistent information, you can exclude with a click.
Exactly. So by clicking on the icon of the details, I can also see the details of the rows. So once again, we jump into a detailed overview of the description, where the code is the main aggregator. We have different suppliers and different prices for the same item. If for any reason we realize that a certain line is not consistent for the analysis, it is always possible to exclude the documents from the analysis itself.
So here we have a practical example on how a category manager can focus his attention very quickly where it matters. So where it matters, where there are more potential of savings, where there are more variations of unit prices, where there are more large distribution of the sourcing between different suppliers, where your Pareto analysis of the supplier is not so good because the last 5% of your spending may be scattered with 100 of little suppliers. All things that require the attention of the category managers, making possible that he can reshape the supply chain of his own categories in a better way. So the idea here is that you do not need to spend time creating good data to make that analysis, but then artificial intelligence is able to do that not only in the historical data, but also by refreshing the data each month. You can also see if the actions that you are taking in your specific categories are really implemented by your colleagues in the business line. Because here we are speaking about most of the time actions that from the procurement perspective are realized via frame contracts or via renegotiations of list of prices. But you need to know if your colleagues that are your internal clients are really exploiting what you are doing and the expected efficiencies of your actions are really realized and can be accounted as a success from your CPO, because at the end of the year, and your CFO, that are at the end the people that wants to see if the actions are really well designed and well implemented. So, for example, one topic that most of the time CPOs are concerned and are also the CFO concerned is the proliferation of suppliers. So little suppliers that provide a little quantity of products or services, and most of the time the cost to manage them is higher is higher than the cost of what you buy from. Okay, so here we can have a clear evidence about what is going on in my tail spend in each category. So I can manage by category or by globally if I want to have a global view. But please, Chiara, can you explain in which way the Pareto analysis works?
Sure. So in this case, we reset all the filters. So let's say that we are having a look at the global spend in this case. The Pareto analysis allows the visualization of the spend in a division in 5 groups, where the first group represents the majority of the spend, so the 80%, and then the next ranges up to the 100%, connected to the number of suppliers that are belonging to this part of the spend. In this case, we can see this is exactly a usual situation, that the majority of the spend covers, let's say, a small amount of suppliers at the end, and the last 1% of the spend, if we have a look at the delta, includes more than 4,000 suppliers. So in this case, we might want to make an analysis on which are the suppliers, or we can drill down these 4,000 suppliers. Let's click on also on the images that becomes an active filters. So in this case, we are going to analyze the last 1% of the spend and the related suppliers. In this case, the last 1% of the last 1%. It's always possible to see the details of these suppliers. So with the icon, we can see just below the table, the list of the analyzed suppliers. Here we have the list and the related spend. So you see how the money, it's very small. So in this case, all of these suppliers, which actually are almost 1,000, they are connected to very small amounts. If we go back, for example, into the by nature analysis, it is possible to see what are the main categories where these suppliers are. So we can see the distribution of the main areas of these small suppliers, small amount suppliers.
And I want to point out one interesting here, that if you go to the smart pies on the top of the screen, you see clearly that you are buying spot buying. You are not buying using frame contract. This is a kind of spend that is absolutely out of control from the procurement perspective. So this is the kind of spending that we call sometimes maverick, or sometimes are not maverick properly, because maverick is spending without the PO, but are spent out of control at the end of the day. And this is one of the pain points. So how to discover quickly and easily which part of the spending is belonging to this not perfectly managed process here. And I suppose that James has a lot of experience about unmanaged spending. Yes, James?
Yeah, I mean, my background actually is I managed CapEx and MRO for the best part of 6 years in the FMCG industry, and you're right, Adriano, it was a massive problem, and I think being able to drill down into that level of detail is so helpful as a category manager or as an MRO, even as a local buyer for MRO for a group of plants or a country, because the argument that stakeholders will usually give you is that, oh, we need all of these suppliers because supplier A can only supply this brand and supplier B can only supply this brand. And with what you showed, Chiara, there, if you've got 80 suppliers that were supplying Siemens components,
yep,
that's clearly a bullshit argument, because you've shown that if it's Siemens, then even if they need more than one supplier, just email every single stakeholder and say, who are your favorite 3 Siemens suppliers? And then you can probably chop half of them out immediately.
Yeah, exactly. So in this case, it's quite understandable when we say granularity. granularity is the enabler factor. When we said at the beginning, you need to have a granularity in the categorization, in the by nature categorization, that seems to be a sort of theoretical declaration, but it really is not. Is practical, is the enabler factor to make this kind of analysis. Otherwise, you cannot do that. So starting from the bottom and not starting from the top, starting from the details of the purchase order and not starting from the name of the supplier and the main categories that the supplier can supply to you, enables a kind of analysis in the restructuring of your supply chains that is unparalleled. And so this is exactly the approach we are speaking about. But obviously, you can do a lot of things more, because when you have this quality of data, you can create your own kind of analysis. Because, for example, in this case, we have a very powerful pivot table approach like in Excel, but with even more powerful features here to create your own analysis. Yes, Chiara?
Mhm. Yes. So we can show an example of any custom analysis that can be created here. Once again, we can also, for example, filter for a category. So let's say that we're in charge to analyze the marketing area of the spend. In here, I can, for example, have a look of which are the organizations through the time. So let's say that we want to split the analysis by quarters and have a look at the spend and see what is the spend for this. I'll confirm. Let's add the column total and see. So this is the distribution for this analysis of the organizations of the company. It can be done by countries, by anything. And in this case, we are having a look at the total spend and then divided into the quarters.
So
this is just an example.
And obviously you can name that analysis and you can store your analysis in the preferred one. Yep. And you can create a graph, and obviously you can share this analysis with your colleagues. And by the way, every time you refresh the data each month with new purchase order, new invoices, those analyses are automatically updated. So you do not need any effort to create your own dashboard, etc. So
exactly.
the idea is always the same. So how to make it possible to provide actionable insights with practically zero effort. Because what you have seen till now are not recorded things, but are created on the fly by Chiara. So the kind of speed and readiness of the information making possible the views that you have seen till now is astonishing, because we are dealing in situations with millions or even dozens of millions of purchase order positions behind what you are seeing here right now. So we are speaking with companies that has operation all over the world. We didn't mention the fact that the system obviously deals with any kind of language without any necessity to translate to English. So natively, the artificial intelligence is able to understand what is written in Spanish, in Chinese, in Portuguese, or in Malaysian without the necessity to translate to English, and in any kind of encoding or subcode or whatever criteria you have used in your original ERP or transactional system. So we have 5 minutes left. So we are running out of time. So I suppose that maybe we can dedicate the last 5 minutes to some questions that can arise from the audience. What do you think, James? You are on mute, James.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, indeed, Adriano. So if anyone is in the audience and does have a question, we have just under 5 minutes left. So please type your questions in the comments if you do have anything. I will bring them up on the screen by way of magic, and then I will put those to Adriano and Chiara, depending on who is best from the Creactives team to answer them. So yeah, just while we're waiting to see if any questions come in, it does just go to show that to be happy with the tools that you're using on the procurement tech side, you have to focus on the data at the beginning, because if you don't, especially with categories that are as complex as technical spare parts, then you're just going to get garbage out of your data. And while there are, a lot of different spend analytics tools on the market, and some of them can classify using AI up to a pretty high percentage and can go up to level 4 classification, to get this level of technical detail out of engineering spare parts, I genuinely haven't seen a tool that can do the same as what Creactives can. So it is, very specialist piece of kit, but it is pretty much the only thing that I've seen out there that does it to that level of detail so quickly and fast and easily. So yeah, sorry, just Stefano, did you say there's a question that's just come in?
Yes, there is a couple of questions.
Shall we bring you up? I can't. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so from Kafiel, how do you classify level? How do you classify item level spend together?
Well, this is
and then he's asking HSN codes. I don't know if that means anything to you.
Well, HSN code are obviously a taxonomy, because at the end of the day, we're speaking about the taxonomy for custom cost. And like any other taxonomy, the artificial intelligence is able to categorize in HS code, or in SPSC or E-class, or the custom taxonomy, without the necessity to make any mapping within the taxonomy. This is a very technical thing, but for the people that is in the audience, they can understand that mapping is always a mess, because the taxonomies are not created with the same logic. So when you try to map between taxonomies, you can have inconsistencies that drives, and the end drives errors. Altogether, yes, because artificial intelligence is exactly trained to do so. So in the setup phase of the system, we take the data, the whole quantity of data of the last 2 years, 3 years of a client, and we train the artificial intelligence in a way that can understand the data of a single company, and makes possible to categorize massively all that data with a precision of the 95%. A precision that is not promised by us, but is checked by the client with the extraction of random samples, judging line by line these random samples, so assuring that the quality is there. But the other point of this story is that whenever the artificial intelligence is trained on the past 2 years, is also trained to automatically refresh the data for the future. So whenever we finish the setup, and after 1 month arrives a new set of data that has been created during that month, the artificial intelligence is already there to classify them all massively overnight, and give the availability of the data for the analysis in the system the day after. So this approach is obviously very powerful, because it makes possible to react very quickly if something is not going in the appropriate way.
Okay, thank you, Adriano. There hasn't been any other questions come in. Last chance, anyone, if you've got a question before we sign off. For anyone that's still with us, this session has been recorded, and anyone that clicked on attend we will DM you with the link to the recording after the session as well. Either myself or Stefano from Creactives will reach out with a direct message just to send you the link to the video. So if you did have to drop off early, or if you missed the beginning, then you will get the recording if you want to watch it. So yeah, just closing remarks. I mean, every supplier that you have in your long tail is a delivery problem, a quality problem, or an unpaid invoice waiting to happen that can stop your production line. So logically, the fewer suppliers you have, the less administrative and day-to-day operational headaches you're going to have as well in your organization. So there has to be a happy balance of having healthy competition, but you definitely don't need 1,000 suppliers for your engineering spare parts and technical purchases. So I think Creactives is one of a suite of solutions that can help you to get there in terms of understanding what you buy and who you buy it from, and where maybe you have too much fat in terms of number of vendors that you have across your different technical categories of spend. So, Adriano, Chiara, thank you very much. I'll leave the closing. Leave the closeout to you if you have anything else. Otherwise, we can say goodbye to everyone and thank you for joining.
We are at disposition of everyone that wants to know more details, obviously, and see you soon. Thank you, James, for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.